In this video, we're going to go over the different panels in the Data Storyteller app. Here, my chart is already loaded and set up in the spreadsheet control section. If you want to learn how to do that, we have an overview video we'll link to in the description. Data Storyteller uses a variety of panels that lets you configure every aspect of the chart. By default, they're in the general order we suggest using them, but you can use any panel at any time and use the drop-downs to rearrange them. The Dimensions panel is where you tell Data Storyteller how to interpret your data, what to use for the X and Y axis, and if you want the data to control the size or color of the data points. This is also where you can set the minimum point size for scatter charts that use the size channel. A lot of basic charts and maps don't need dimensions and can be set up using just the spreadsheet controls, so the dimension panel is disabled by default. We have a separate video going over how to set up the dimensions for your charts that we'll link to in the description. In the axis panel, you can set the interval for the X and Y axis. By default, this is set automatically based on your data, but you can change it to manual and enter your own interval. This sets how far apart each tick is on the axis. There's a limit to how many labels each axis can have, and if you set an interval that goes over that limit, you'll see an invalid value error message, and the interval will revert to the default. In this panel and every other panel, the font and color buttons affect the font and color of the field that they're next to. And for the X-axis labels, you can also change the angle. These drop-downs set the number display format, how the numbers are displayed, and any special characters like percentage signs or currency symbols that you can add to the labels. If your chart has data that goes below 0, you can also use this panel to set 0 lines for the X-axis, Y-axis, neither, or both. The Legend panel controls everything about the legend. You can show or hide the legend, control the background and border, set the width and height of the legend, enter an optional title that you can show or hide. The position of the legend can be changed with these drop-downs, left side, right side, and top, middle, bottom, which automatically moves the chart to fit the new legend position. If the chart has enough space to overlap the legend and the chart, you can do it with this checkbox, which also enables the chart to fill the full screen. If your legend is displaying numbers, which is usually when you have a map or are using the color channel in the Dimensions panel, number format options and special characters are available. You'll also have the option to have these legend labels set automatically or set a manual min and max. If your color continuity is set to continuous, you'll also be able to customize the tick marks, which control which labels are displayed on the legend, like midpoint or median, min and max, and gradient markers. Gradient markers adds labels to the legend wherever you have gradient markers set up in the color panel. Next, the Data Visuals panel controls the look of the chart, data point, symbol, and size for scatter charts, bar thickness for bar charts, line thickness for line charts, and the option to turn on and customize the data points. The rendering order dropdown controls which parts of the chart are in front where they overlap. Numbers by data points toggles if the data value is displayed by the bars or points. For US maps, Data Visuals is where you find the state and county zoom level toggle. And for county maps, this is where you select if you're using FIPS codes to differentiate counties, or if you're selecting a specific state and using its county's names. For world maps, this is where you have the option to change the projection and toggle latitude and longitude lines. All maps have the option to set the thickness of the boundary lines between states, counties, or countries, which can also be set to decimal points lower than 1, which is useful if you're zooming in. The animation panel controls how data animates on and if it animates off. Setting this to timed animation lets you set these parameters in the Data Storyteller app, and setting it to Animate Range Filter lets you set specific animation controls in the host application, which gives you a lot more control and allows you to use keyframes. We'll go over that in a separate video linked in the description. Setting data selection to all series makes all of the data animate on at the same time. Each data series animates one series at a time, and each data point lets you control the timing of each individual data point. Animating on bar, line, and scatter charts can all either draw on or fade on, and the fade draw time is how long each of those animations take. Each series and each data point also have a delay interval, which is how long between each animation. For example, if the delay interval is lower than the fade draw time, the next data series or next data point will start drawing on before the current one finishes, and if the delay interval is higher than the fade draw time, there'll be a pause between one finishing and the next one starting. Finally, data stays on screen controls all aspects of the data animating off. Always means the data always stays on screen. Disappears instantly will cause it to change to the minimum opacity as soon as it's done animating on. And fade off uses the timing controls to set what fades off and how long it takes. Like all of the other fields, you can enter decimal points into any of these to get the timing exactly how you want it. If you have multiple datasets loaded, set one of the panels to Animation Multiple Datasets to control how the datasets animate on and transition. The first dataset only has the fade on option for now, and the rest of the sets can fade on or animate with timing controls for animating on, off, and the time between animations. Additional controls can be set in the host app using keyframes, which we'll go over in a separate video. You can move the color controls down to one of the panels by setting one of the panels to color. Depending on your chart settings, this has different options. Preset color palettes, and a gradient that includes presets that you can customize by adding as many points and custom colors as you want. When your legend has numbers, you can switch between discrete and continuous legends. The Grid Lines panel toggles lines for the x-axis, y-axis, none, or both with controls for color and thickness. Scale and Position adjusts the chart's position and allows you to scale the chart up or down without losing any quality. For world maps, the Scale and Position panel also has rotation controls, which is mostly useful for orthographic globe maps. And finally, for charts, Titles includes the chart title and titles for each axis. For more tutorials, check out our YouTube channel and email us with any questions at cs@digitalanarchy.com. And you can download a free demo of Data Storyteller or any of our other plugins at digitalanarchy.com.